I'm going to start. I go, kia ora everybody and welcome to the Pitch Perfect podcast. We are a flesh and blood podcast that aims to educate, empower and support the female community in flesh and blood. We are your hosts. I'm Melody and this is Elaine.
Hi.
Kia ora. And today we're joined by Aurélie, who you may know is one part of the I Am a Fidia, a flesh and blood YouTube channel. And we're also joined by Ellie, who hails from the UK and is a freelance esports commentator. Both of our guests today are gaming casters with diverse backgrounds, and we are really excited to have them on to chat to us today. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we're gonna have a good discussion today. So we're gonna dive in first with a little icebreaker. So just tell us a little bit about yourselves. We already mentioned in the intro, obviously, that you guys are both casters, but here's the big question for I think every caster ever. Do you actually also play Flesh and Blood as well as cast? And then tell us, how did you get into the game? We can start with Aurélie.
Okay. So I think that a part of other Flesh and Blood players are the same as me, as was playing another TCG before. I can name it. It's like MTG stuff, and they start to do some weird things about organized play and some marketing stuff. So I decided to move to another one, and we start the community in the French part of the Belgium. And we were one of the first shop to start playing Flesh and Blood, and then it just grew and grew. And I've been involved a lot in the judge part because we have like two of the first level 2 Flesh and Blood judge in Belgium for Europe. And then we are very good at this part. And previously I was also a lot working as a judge, so I just continue to do that. And I've been on staff on the different European calling and even at the 2 PT as a scorekeeper. And also I'm developing a lot of tools for judge, logistic in tournament, and some for coverage as well. So this is what I'm most doing in Flesh and Blood. I play sometime, but and you have to, because you cannot comment a game if you are not available to play it. But you have to make a choice. So that's basically, that's like, I play in the Armory on Friday night, and I'm on staff in all the calling and the PT. So, and I'm covering the national. So
That's
comes
awesome.
to both.
Do you still play Magic the Gathering?
No, I stopped. I think I just sell half of my collection because I'm not playing anymore. And it's just funding all my Flesh and Blood stuff. So I just put this in my local game store. They are selling it, and I have like this coupon I can use. And I think that from the beginning, I never have to take money from my pockets to buy Flesh and Blood products because it's entirely financed by that. So that's fine.
By your Magic the Gathering sales. That's wonderful. Love it.
Yeah.
And what about you, Ellie?
So I only got into Flesh and Blood about a year ago now, just over a year ago, I think. My local game store was having a learn to play event and picked up the Ira packs, played one game, fell in love, sold my Magic cards, and then bought into Flesh and Blood basically immediately. I have nowhere near the achievement list. Yeah, I have nowhere near the achievement list that Aurélie has, but I have but I've done a lot of stuff in more kind of aiming to do more stuff in the broadcast and production side. So I play a lot, kind of 2 or 3 times a week. We only have one local game store, so it's not ideal. But yeah, so I definitely play. Not as much as I want to.
You played other games before this, though? Because yeah.
So I used to play Magic, played Pokemon before that. But again, I was never kind of top of the packs. In Pokemon, I think I might have got to top 64 at one point, but something.
That's I don't play Pokemon, but
huge.
Pokemon's big. I imagine
Yeah.
there's tons of people. So that's I don't know. You say that's not top of the pack, so that's pretty impressive to me. I don't.
Thank you.
I have a question, but this is for both of you because it sounds like you
Mhm.
both came from TCGs, one in common, which is MTG or Magic the Gathering. Why did you change to Flesh and Blood? Like, because it sounds like, you sold your whole collection, Ollie, you sold some of yours, Ellie, and decided to sort of dedicate yourself to Flesh and Blood. Why was that?
First, I think that I was very involved in the competitive part of MTG, and what I liked about the game, except for the fact that it's a good game, like the mechanics are good and stuff like that, I was in love with the organized play as a player. I went to a pro tour or stuff. I was really like competitive, and I was also in the staffing part. And with the COVID crisis, everything dropped, and we clearly see that MTG doesn't really want to restart what was the game before. So I decided just to have a look of what was existing elsewhere. So I even start to say, will I be a professor in Pokemon, or like the tournament organizer are the same. So we can start to, but the ambience is very, like the atmosphere is very different on Pokemon, I think. And I think one of my Dutch friends just mentioned that, there is this new game. Just read the rules because, as judge, we like to just read the rules. Maybe we'll try to be a judge. And this is just starting. And I don't know, you just put your little finger and you got everything and you are into it, because I think it was the time the game just exploding and starts to have more and more, especially in Belgium. Like it's coming in Europe. It's the first people were playing in Netherlands. And so Belgium in Netherlands, like when you are, I don't know if you know that, but in Belgium there is like two country, even like third country in one country. So half of the Belgium is speaking Dutch, the other half is speaking French, and then you have a small part speaking German. But then every Dutch player were playing in the Flanders, so the Dutch part of Belgium, and then it started to go on the French part. And this was just at this moment we start to play. And then one of my good friends, they were searching somebody to handle the Belgium national. He was a very high level in MTG, so he just say, we had judged the national, and then we just start to do that. And that's the story.
What set was that? Like, what set did you guys get into the game?
I think it was the Monarch.
Okay.
For me,
I think my first set was the end of Monarch, and like Tales of I was my first like pre-release.
I think I didn't get any first edition Monarch, so I think it was just releasing the new Monarch stuff. But I think it's the same, like you say, 1 year ago, and I think that's basically that, like summer from 2021. So
awesome. All right. So we're curious to know a little bit about each of your casting histories. So, Arielle, you casted, I believe it was the finals for the Calling Leo.
The Calling, very cool one.
Which that was really cool to see. I remember like I was driving home from Houston, but I had stopped for lunch, and I like pulled up my phone, put on the cast, and then I saw that you were casting it, and I like slid up, grabbed my phone, texted Melody. I was like, "There's a woman casting the finals Leo right now! Like, this is so cool."
Yes.
So was that your first time casting, or had you casted other games before?
Yes and no. First game I'm casting, but I'm doing some coverage for my channel, but it's not the same scale, it's like a little coverage. Right. And here I've been, the whole weekend I was working for coverage, but in the backstage. So I was doing all the data extraction, all the metagame, all the different graphics you see on the screen. It was me and my team doing that on the backstage. I also developed a software to help the casters to display the cards, the life total, and this kind of stuff. So I was running all the weekend,
Wow.
and they were hoping to me to be able to cast, but I say it will be just basically impossible. So Romain was here casting because I think they really want to have a French caster for the French PT. And at the end of the Sunday, everything was done. They don't need me for the stuff. So I was able to cast the final. And that was cool because it was somebody we were sponsoring with the channel, which were just basically just giving them sleeves, because we don't have money. But that was kind of a friend or people we know because it's from the Belgium community, and it was very exciting because it was the game which were deciding if Prism will go Living Legend or not for the national season. And nobody was thinking Joris will win because he was facing 2 Briards in a row, and everybody say it's a bad matchup. Prism will never make it, and the game was just incredible. And the final, like he won in a very Prism way, casting something in response, and then there is a spectral shield triggered by one of the on the rune chant, and then it deals a 2 lethal damage in response to a lethal attack. That was fantastic. Like, I couldn't hope a better game to cast for my first big time.
Yeah, and the finals of like all of it. It was very exciting. I ended up like extending my little stop for lunch on my road trip to watch the whole thing because I was super excited about it.
Cool. So Ellie, this is like an introduction, I think, for our viewers to you, because many of them would have seen Aurélie. So sorry, my phone. And we've not yet had the privilege to see you cast for Flesh and Blood yet, or for a tournament, but you do have an extensive casting history for other games. We've seen your CV or your resume and some of your work.
Where'd you find that?
So, we've done the Google searches and
we've
the
said
stalking.
it before. We stalk our guests always.
How did you find that?
So tell us a little bit about that, like your casting history, commentating, and how did you get into this game?
Yeah, sure.
The casting game.
The casting game. So I started casting about 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, in Overwatch, so FPS game that's just kind of actually just today being kind of cut off, and they're making a new one for it. So I played Overwatch for a couple of years, and I competed in a few tournaments, didn't do very well. Watched the casters, didn't like how they casted it, and thought, I can do better. And then. So I was part of an organization, so it was for LGBTQ plus and women people in gaming. And I was like, hey, to the person that runs the organization, can I make a tournament? Can I set one up? And she was like, yeah, go for it. Let's see what we can do. And then I basically set up, it was only quite a small tournament. We got something like 8 teams together. I had to work out how OBS worked.
Oh, yes. OBS.
I was like, how does this work? This is confusing. And then I had to find out how we can stream that to Twitch, how Twitch works, because I never streamed before. I had to kind of go through all that whole process by myself. Managed to find a few other people to kind of help out with commentating with me that I kind of bring on as a guest. And we spent the day, I was observing it and casting it myself. And then from there, I kind of fell in love with the whole thing of it. Like, partly the attention. Everyone likes being, the focus of the attention, right? It's fun. But also just the idea of I'm okay at video games, I'm okay at card games, but I'm better at talking about them. My theory is better than my actual play. So I want to kind of show that off and give back to the community that I'd got so much from. Like this organization, Galactic Guardians, they gave me and a bunch of other people a home in gaming where it's not always easy to find one. And this tournament was kind of my way of giving back and helping to get their name out there. And I think it did. And then since then, I casted Overwatch for another 2.5 years, 3 years after that. I've kind of only just stopped casting it as much now, for a lot of brilliant organizations, mainly focused on LGBTQ plus and women's safe spaces, some mental health safe spaces as well. A bunch of amazing organizations out there that have taken me on and kind of trusted me to run the broadcasts, cast them, observe them, various parts of production. And then I've just recently started to kind of go proper freelancing with it, like kind of getting my name out there more. So I'm currently employed by British Esports to cast their student championships, which is between, I think, 14 and 18-year-olds at school and college competing. So I'm casting their Valorant series throughout the entirety of this year. I cast for an organization called Altiora in the UK and the EU, and then an organization called WNAGL, who do Valorant tournaments in the US, and these are both women and non-binary tournaments. And I'm kind of one of their main casters for both of them. And then I love Flesh and Blood. I'm pretty good at it, but not good enough to, I just missed out on that kind of thing. So I want to kind of give back to it in a different way. So I've started recording my armories, just taking my mic setup, taking my camera setup down to my armories and recording them. And they're going to start casting, uploading the videos, and hopefully start to get more people into it. I found 6 people at my local place and other places that want to try casting.
Wow.
So we hopefully start to get more people into it. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell in terms of the casting game, I guess.
That's really cool. That's a lot of really awesome work. You obviously have a lot of passion in the casting space. And so I'm really happy to see people like that coming over to Flesh and Blood. Because you've also done like you said, just so much work for women and other gender minorities in the space, which is really cool to see.
Which we
I
love.
don't think it's the same in all the game you have worked, but I think that Flesh and Blood is one of the more welcoming community I've known from my past experience. I don't know why. Maybe because it's a new game in a new society. But, they don't have this past that can some TCG can have, or video game as well. But I find it very cool. This is also what's make me stay in this community. The game is cool, but the community is very different and very welcoming, and that's refreshing.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's been a lot easier, I think, to become welcomed into a community and hey, I'm non-binary, please use they pronouns for me, and that's sort of nice and easy. It's been much more welcoming, kind of, and easy to feel included than a lot of other places.
So we'll let Elaine go and sort her dog out.
I think she stopped. I don't know.
Okay, no.
Right.
So, and we get this a lot, right? I think with pretty much every single guest we've had on our show, community. When you go out into the community, especially on Twitter where we all hang out, it's a wholesome, supportive, positive community. And I think you're right in that, it's new. It's a new game. So as a community and as an organization for LSS, they can create the culture and the community that they want. And I think part of that is also not tooting the New Zealand horn, but we're also very down to earth in New Zealand. And, it's not a faceless organization. We've got LSS, we've got James White. We see, their devs, we talk to them. They're real people that come out and talk to players, attend events. And, I think that has a part to play as well. They're not just sitting behind their desk creating this game. And now the cat comes in. Kia ora. We're just waiting for one of Ellie's pets to jump in the scene and one of mine.
I wish I had any pets.
So sorry, that was me on a bit of a rant, but I totally agree, and my heart is warm to hear that community has played a part in your journey for both you, Aurélie, and Ellie. So another question for you, Ellie. So as you know, obviously, Elaine and I both huge advocates to bring women into the Flesh and Blood gaming space. You've got a huge background in casting. We just heard that. And especially for casting for women and gender minorities. And we are really curious with your experience and history with working with large groups of female gamers. Like, what kinds of things do you think we can do to draw more women into Flesh and Blood? Like, you just talked about a little group that you casted for with like 8 teams, and I don't know if you saw my eyes, but I'm like, 8 teams? That's huge. So do you have any thoughts about that with, you know, your background?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things. So obviously I play in the UK, and I think we have quite a small population of women and minority gender players, and even less so minority genders that have come out. I know a few people that aren't out that do play Flesh and Blood, and I think one of the most important things we can really do to draw people in and to get the game bigger and more diverse, more inclusive, and feel more welcoming to a lot more people is honestly to have more things like what you two do, like kind of showing off people that are inclusive, do care about this kind of stuff is one of the big things. And I think at the end of the day, having more people like Aurélie on broadcast helps, and seeing that kind of thing. And so to draw from my Valorant experience, for example, we have the Game Changers scene, which is both kind of, so it's cross globally, but it's all based within regions. And on that broadcast, it's, I mean, even on the main like kind of global stage mixed gender tournaments, it's almost always 50-50 in the gender split for broadcast talent, on stage talent, and the people kind of in front of the camera. And I think that really helps to show, hey, everyone's here. Like, this is inclusive for everyone. And I think getting more of that, like, I love the casts that we have in Flesh and Blood. Like, so watching the calling, watching the Pro Tour, that kind of stuff, I love it, and it's always amazing to watch. But it doesn't feel as inclusive as it could, because the gender split isn't anywhere near 50-50 male-female.
That's a question I ask me a lot, like, why? Because, as I said, it's a very inclusive and welcoming community, and so I don't get why there is this, like, percentage which doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know why. That's very strange.
I mean, so I've got a theory of why, at least. And I think it's mainly because, and you see this in casting talent and broadcast talent, there's kind of, on a main broadcast, if you watch esports or like real life sports, normal sports, you kind of have the two commentators that are kind of the main ones that talk over the game. Then you have the analysts and the desk hosts and the people that work between the games or at half times and that kind of thing. And in my time in casting, I've seen most women that come in as casters get relegated down to, like, not
behind the
down, but like
scenes.
to behind the scenes stuff, because they think their target audience is mostly male. Even if it's not, people assume that their target audience, the people that run these broadcasts, is male, and that can end up with being then more men on a broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's like an interesting thing to think about, you know. I don't really know. I love our casting team. Most of everyone who casts for Flesh and Blood are actually pretty good friends of mine, and they do a really good job, and it's very enjoyable. But it is kind of you know, representation is important, and like just watching you, Aurélie, it's just really cool to see someone
Something
who
different.
you can relate to. Yeah, something different. Someone you
Yes.
can relate to a little bit more doing these jobs. But all right, we're gonna dive a little bit more into this later. For now, I have a question, because I've always been curious. So most of us know what it's like to be a player in this space. You know, myself, Melody, pretty much all of our listeners. There's not many people who cast. There's a handful of people who cast, but everyone who enjoys the game knows what it's like to be a player. So I'm curious, as someone who has experience both casting and playing, do you enjoy casting as much as you enjoy playing, or do you prefer one or the other? Why or why not?
Whew.
can start with you,
Who
Ellie.
go first?
Going
Who
like
go
this,
first?
like,
I will say it's very different. casting is much more exhausting in the D-Day. Like, but maybe because most of the time I'm doing the coverage by myself, so I'm like a whole team by myself when I'm doing coverage. So I'm the one being there early, plugging everything, putting the camera. Then I have to comment through the whole tournament, which is a very long day. And then you have to speak because you can just say, "Oh, I'm tired this round, I will do nothing." No, that's not working. So that's a bit of work and a bunch of work before to prepare also my own tools, which is maybe different from the experience of other casters. And for playing, you also have a bunch of preparation before, but then you play your game and then you can focus and just go through the day by playing. But as I said, it's complicated to do both. So I enjoy both, but I have to choose, especially because I love to be competitive and I can't go like to a national without being prepared for that. It's not how I will enjoy the game. So I've put so much energy to like the channel with the Eye of Ophelia channel and all the tournament tools that for now I can't go to a tournament for playing with a free mind. I just continue to play because I need to know the game for comments, but I can't say I will enjoy like going to a calling and just play it because it's required too much effort on top of what I'm doing aside. That's a bit sad, but that's the choice I made.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's
still love to play the
understandable.
game. It's just I'm not winning that much, and because I love to win, that's complicated. Who
What
don't?
about you, Ellie?
I think I'm in the same kind of boat. Like, if I want to compete, I want to compete and win. And when you're doing so much, and when you've got a lot of other things on, it's really difficult to have that prep time. That people, I don't think people realize the amount of prep time that goes into a cast or goes into a commentary.
I was just thinking about that, and I'm like, there is so much that goes into it. You don't just turn up and start talking. You've got to set stuff up, and you've got to think about it. And there's also the actual talking. Like I watch Flake do back to back to back, and I'm like, how does he come up with this stuff, this shit? You know, like you've got to think on your feet. You've got to know the game. And Aurélie, you talked about setting up before the calling, and I'm just like, it's crazy. There's so much work. No thanks from me. Just saying. No, thank you.
But yeah, it's like I think I prefer casting. I like to be kind of in that seat, but I love kind of the tournament organizing and the broadcast organizing as well. Like that entire process that Aurélie you're talking about it takes a lot of effort, but it's so rewarding as well, right? When you get a broadcast done, I imagine you know the feeling. Probably the same on the podcast, right? Like you get a broadcast done, it felt amazing, everything went perfect, and you finish, and it just feels so good. I mean, maybe that's just because I've not won any major events yet. Maybe if I
and you have the same kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So, what's the most challenging part of casting? Is it the setup, or is there anything else? Like this is for both of you.
I think that, as we said, you are taking a lot of effort to prepare it, but you can't play, but you still have to play because if you don't know what to talk about. So you still have to do both. I think that's the most complicated stuff, like stay up to date. Like for me, it's easier because when I'm doing commentating, more about what we call the callers, like the one which is asking question, like I don't know, so explain to me, and you will explain to the spectator as well. But you still need to know what question will be interesting and will not be too dummy. So it's a bit easier for me, but still have to read all the article and stuff like that. And that's complicated. And as you say, speaking constantly, like, and for me, I have one more disadvantage. I'm not English native speaker. And I'm very I'm comfortable speaking a lot, but having to speak in a language which is not mine, it's very complicated. And I think this is maybe why we don't have that much European caster right now. It's much more English speaker in the caster team, because you have the accent. Some people love it, some people don't love it. It can sometimes be hard to understand for some people, depending on which accent you have. And also it's much more work to be fluent and able to speak correct English for 12 hours, basically.
12 hours. You said it right there,
Yeah.
Aurélie. 12 hours.
I'd say I can barely speak for 12 hours, and this is my native language. I don't. Wow. More props to you.
And is it the same for you, Ellie, or are your challenges sort of different? There's so much that goes into it. You guys are opening my eyes when it comes to casting.
I think I have the advantage of I only speak English, but I also only cast in English, right? So I think that I definitely have that advantage of, for me, talking for 12 hours on a broadcast, it's bad for my throat. I had a throat injury about a year and a half back because I did 2 12-hour days in a row for an Overwatch tournament, which was not a good idea. Don't do that.
There's a handy tip for anyone listening or watching. Go.
But the coming up for what to say and the talking and the waffle, I'm good at waffling. All my friends know that, and everyone that I broadcast for probably knows that by now as well. But the talking bit is relatively easy. It's the, like I said, the knowing what to do and the having to do research onto. So I play Dash. That's all I do. I don't know how Prism works. I don't know how Islanders reactions times work. Having to do that research for Flesh and Blood and for Valorant as well, for other games. Valorant, luckily I'm a coach for it as well, so that means that I don't have to prep as much for that. But for games like Overwatch, games like Flesh and Blood that I don't play at that, or don't understand at that kind of level, you have to do so much prep into such niche things that might never come up. If you're casting, if you know you're going to cast a calling, there might not be an Icelander, but you still have to spend 3 hours.
We choose it.
Yeah, but yeah, you still have to spend 3 hours learning that, 3 hours learning Dash, 3 hours learning Odin, 3 hours learning each hero, because in Flesh and Blood they're all so different. Except for Ninja, basically. They're all just so different.
Yeah, they're all so different, and then there's also different game plans you can play for each, So
depending on the matchup,
aggro, mid-range, and the matchup. The knowledge of casters always just blows my mind, They seem to just know everything.
And keeping up to date with everything. We just had the banned and restricted announcement at Errata. We read that. So just good to know, guys, if you missed that. That came out yesterday. You've almost got to be experts in everything, or at least have a really good understanding of absolutely everything to be able to talk about it with confidence.
But for example, to how much work it can be. Also, Romain was one of my co-caster on my channel. He was casting the whole PT at Lille, and so he was going a few days before on Airbnb. Some Belgium and French people rent to prepare for the PT, and it just sat down with player just to understand and just watch games before to be sure he understand how is different matchup and what was they expecting. And so he discussed a lot with PT players to be sure they will be able to speak about the game and the different choice and what people have, why they were running this kind of deck list, what was the expecting metagame and this kind of stuff. For example, you have the ban, and I have no idea what will be the metagame, especially in Blitz, because I think I didn't play Blitz for a long time.
Stormstriders has gone in Blitz, Aurélie.
Yeah, but all I know is that my Kano friends are sad, but then I also have people who are qualified for the Worlds, and so they really need to think about what this will change and what's. So I will just let them do the work and ask them questions after.
Good strategy. I like it.
Good strategy. All right, one more question before we move on to a different topic. But do you guys, for each of you, do you guys have any casting goals in Flesh and Blood, or also just like in general? What does the future look like for you? Do you think you're just gonna cast forever, or do you have any other game related plans? You can,
Who
Ellie,
start?
take it away.
Okay, sure. So I think for me, it's I would love to be involved in broadcast and production in the future of Flesh and Blood. Like I love this game, and if I can spend my time traveling around different areas, broadcasting their nationals, broadcasting their like Pro Tours or callings or battle hardens, whatever I can do, I'd love to be able to do that. Like regardless of where it is in the production booth, as it were, whether it's behind the scenes setting up the like. It was amazing in the Pro Tour. Just props, honestly. But setting up that or setting up, well, whether it's casting, whether it's something like that, I'd love to be able to do that. But for me, it's more about getting more people out there in general. I want everything to be as diverse as possible in Flesh and Blood, including the broadcast, including the production. Like I know the judges are it's quite a diverse team of judges, at least in the UK and the US, as far as I know.
Yeah, there is.
But like I want to kind of have that same thing translate over into Flesh and Blood, and if I can do that from behind the scenes, that's probably the better space to do it from rather than in front of the camera.
Quick question before Aurélie. Ellie, have you sent LSS your resume?
I have.
Okay, good.
It's not LSS you need to contact. We'll talk about it after if you want.
That's yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Connections.
Different people run it. But, yeah. I will be messaging you after this. But yeah, so I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest things when it comes to casting, and this is going slightly off topic, I'm sorry, is like just having an opportunity to break into it. Like not a lot of people get the opportunity to try it out. And then when we're kind of narrowing the percentages down, if 10% of people have the opportunity to try, then only what if we have, let's say, 20% female kind of like player base of in Flesh and Blood of females, right? 20% of that. Then it means that it's even less people are even likely to try and start casting. Like it just kind of makes it really tricky. Yeah. So making that as 50% of people have an opportunity to try and cast, that's my aim, I think.
I love that goal.
And now I can't talk after that. Because I'm a bit more selfish.
No, that's okay.
It's good. It's fine.
I always it's always been a complicated part for me being in by my job. I'm working in the IT as a lead position, and in all my hobbies to be in a very male environment. And I'm not really into I don't like to force pushing women to have more women. I think that women are great and you don't need to push normally to make them be there. But that's the theory. And in practice, I've even if I'm not agreeing, I'm seeing that it's working and having a representation is working. So I take on myself, and I understand that sometimes just being this woman on cast can have a huge impact. I have seen that before. Like I was lead of the judges for MTG in Paris, and just being a female, I had a lot of more female candidates because that was easier for them to go to another female or to identify as a judge. And so I know that it can have an impact, but I can't say it's my goal. I'm just hoping this will be a happy side effect.
Yeah.
But mostly I'm already in this place. Ellie, you were talking being in the backstage. Involved in a lot of stuff and a lot of tools for LSS and for different tournament organizer. And I like where I am because it's very rewarding to see your tools being used and bringing something and some value. And like I developed the software, and when the caster in Lille have that in their hand, they say, "Oh, that's too good, I want that in all coverage now, and then you are proud because it's the fact that you were doing some coverage before you know what they need. So I like being that, but I'm hoping to have a bit more on the screen appearance. But I don't think I will be enjoying, like, for example, casting a PT the whole weekend. Like, it's not possible for me. It's too much pressure. And as I said, I will need to work more on all the English fluent stuff to being able to do that for 12 hours. So yes, maybe have a bit of that, having this small coverage with my channel, have 1 or 2 big games, official one, and then continue the work on the backstage. I think that's my perfect future in the game.
Sounds awesome. Sounds really cool. Those are great goals for both of you. Now we're going to shift the conversation a little bit. We have talked about it a little bit. We've delved in. You talked about it, Aurélie. You know, even in your work, it's a male-dominated space. We see it in the gaming space in general. We see it in casting, not just in Flesh and Blood, but I think across the board. Ellie probably sees a bit more diversity, I think, potentially, than the rest of us do in the Flesh and Blood scene. We also want to preface our korero conversation to say that we aren't minimising the great work that all the other male casters do, but representation in these spaces is really important, and we want to talk more about it. So, Elaine, you've got a question.
Yeah. All right. So to start us off, a question for both of you guys. Just what are your thoughts on gender minority and just minority groups in general in the casting industry? Not just in Flesh and Blood, but in the casting industry as a whole, in your background and other games. Like, do you think there is enough representation? We can start with Ellie.
Sure. Yeah, so I kind of delved into this a little bit already with Valorant, right? The Valorant Global tournament has a very, very good representation on talent, but on casters specifically, not so much. They only have kind of the top global stage. They have 1 woman caster out of 8 casters, so 4 caster pairs. But they have a lot of people on the desk that do identify as women. So that kind of difference there, overall, it's pretty good representation, but it's still not all the way. And I think in other esports, it's less diverse. I think Valorant is kind of near the top of that at the moment. Whereas a lot of other esports, which is why I come from, I don't know much about kind of regular sports commentary. I'm not a sports person.
Neither.
I don't know that
Cool,
anyone here is.
No.
But yeah, so in esports, it's nowhere near what it could be, and at the kind of top level of esports commentary, at least in the UK, of UK folk that I know of, I only know of 1 transgender or non-binary person at the top of the kind of top echelon as well, regardless of kind of women or minority gender. Just 1 trans person as well. I think there's a lot of space for more minority groups to come in and like make the impact that we know they can. There's so many great examples of minority groups, whether it's race, gender, sexuality, anything, coming in and making a huge impact, but they don't seem to last as long in those industries. So I think it could be a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's complicated as a minority to be on the spotlight, and being a caster is being on the spotlight. And the problem is, if you're on your spectator, you have just 1 hassle. This will be the much louder one in the chat. And I've seen that in the past with MTG, when they start to have a female caster like 10 years ago, and they just stop because they have to cut off the chat. I think if you do that today, you will not have this kind of behavior. Like, it's happy stuff that things are changing, but you still have this fear to be judged because you are part of a minority, as it can be for a trans person or just like different type of minority. And this is always complicated because each time you're doing that, you have to battle to be a good caster. But then you have an additional pressure because you also have a representation role. And this is a lot of pressure. Like, even if it's not your fight, it will become your fight. Because no matter what, you will be there being this representation item on the screen. And some people just don't like that. Like, it's not because you are a trans person that you want to fight every day and take the energy to fight for trans rights. It doesn't mean you don't want them to have rights. It's a lot of energy to have. And that's the same for women. And that's also a problem for me when I'm casting. You will also always asking, am I here because I'm good? Or am I here because I need representation? And so, especially women who are very good to have this imposter syndrome, it's really not helping.
Yes. Yes. I can
So you're
identify with
forced to
that.
find
Yep.
that. Like, you have to be good and you have to be better than a man in the same position, because you have to like, it's much more work for you, because, as I said, you are not only casting, you're also doing this representation role, even if you don't want. And you also have to fight against, am I in the right position? Do I deserve to be here? Which is maybe not a question other people can ask themselves. So that's the problem.
Imposter syndrome is a real thing. I mean,
It absolutely is.
Good
But you
point.
raise some really good points. Like, it's a dual role almost. You're trying to fulfill your role as a caster, but then there's also representation and what that role may entail, or the pressures that you put on yourself. Like, I think there's a lot to be said there. This is very interesting.
I know.
But maybe that's too much. Like, as I said, I never feel unwelcome in the Flesh and Blood community, and I normally don't have to feel this kind of pressure, because I think I never have any sexist problem in Flesh and Blood. Like, in my local game store, in the Discord community, Twitter, like, never. So normally I don't have to be afraid of that, but it's still in your head. And even I don't know, even if I'm going to cast, I will not thinking, how do I need to, how clothes do I need to wear? Like, can I be as feminine as I am normally, or is it a bad or not professional things to do as a casters? Do I put different makeup, or this
Do I wear no makeup? Am I showing
Yeah.
too much booby? What am I doing?
It
Like,
seems
all these things that we've got to think about because we're under the spotlight.
It seems a bit like nobody cares, but really not nobody cares. And even if you think that it's not really important question, you still ask yourself this kind of question.
Yeah, no.
And I think that men people, they can just go in casting and be very natural. They don't have to be afraid to be themselves. And I think that good women casters can also be the one who can go over that and also be natural and just themselves. But I think it's different step to do.
I mean, it's a really good point, because like you said, like, the Flesh and Blood community is amazing, very, very welcoming, inclusive, and just great. I don't have any issues with Flesh and Blood community, but it's still like, I'm even not even casting, just being a player or a podcaster and being a female in this space. It's like still a thought before going to any event. You become very self-aware that you're gonna be like a minority in this room. Like, I'm gonna be probably one of the only women in this Discord or at this tournament or whatever. And it's so there's kind of like an imposter syndrome, like you said, like, oh, what should I wear? Can I do my makeup like I would normally do? Like, you're just I don't know. The lead up to me is like all this self-aware imposter syndrome, and then once I'm in the space and everyone is there and being nice, it kind of floats away, but it's still in the back of your head. So I think that's a really interesting point to bring up.
Great kōrero. Kōrero means, sorry, conversation in Māori. So, like, we know that diversity in casting is not going to change overnight, just like in the gaming space, but we've got to start somewhere, right? And help drive the changes that we want to see. And Elaine and I would love to hear your views on what you feel can be done right now, to help bring more minority groups into the casting space. Like, we're going to start small, right? We can't be like, everybody's going to jump in and we want everybody to do it. We need to start somewhere small. So what are both of your views on how we can do that as a community?
So I think from my point of view, at least, it comes down to having more opportunities for, at even armory level, for people to be able to cast, to have a go at it. And so this is something I'm quite really pushing for, is just making as many kind of like videos of people playing, making as many opportunities at armories or skirmishes or kind of lower level events for people to come along and just give it a go. Because like I said before, if you raise that percent from 10% of people have the opportunity to cast to 50, then that, like, a rising tide raises all boats. Is that the phrase? Something like that, right?
Never heard it. Don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
I think,
But basically,
yeah,
yes. Something like that.
Something like that.
The more opportunities, the more
Yes.
like chance that people of minority groups will have an opportunity. And this is something I'm working on, so keep an eye on my socials.
Cool.
But yeah, like I want there to be as many opportunities as possible for more people, and then hopefully that will help. And then hopefully it'll get to the point of, if you're a minority group, you don't have to worry about have that self-awareness and that kind of imposter syndrome, because it's the norm, right, to have more people. And as soon as we kind of get that, like, at some point we'll hit a critical mass of minority groups in on-camera talent, and at that point no one will have to worry anymore, because it will just be normal.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because I think without my experience with my own channel and the fact that by accident we start doing coverage, and because I was part of the team, I was the one doing coverage, I will never be able to be on the cast team for the calling. And I think this is the problem. We don't know any talent we can promote, because they just start every PT and colleague with the same crew, which is, I know they are amazing, so there is no reason to change them. But then I think maybe if we have more opportunity on maybe lower level, then we can start to have people shining from there and rising from there.
Yeah, I think the lower level is a good idea. I actually
Great
did
start.
Flake's podcast Instant Speed had like a just like an online fun little tournament, and then the top 8 was casted by the Combat Chain, which is Pat Smash over at the Combat Chain. And he messaged me and he was like, hey, do you want to cast the top 8, like a top 8 game with me? And I was like, I don't know how to cast. I've never done that before. And he's like, that's fine, just try it out. And I did. It was like really fun. And it was just like a whatever tiny little tournament, not even for XP, just run through a Discord. But it was still like a lot of fun to do and to get that experience. And even just like that low level was, I don't know. I was like, I probably did an awful job, but I was like, this is cool. This is fun. And like yeah, you have to start somewhere. So I think there's really good points.
It's not something you have a talent for. It's something you train for. And so you need
it's practice. That definitely like opened my eyes to just like how much work you have to put in just to really get into this. It's not something that comes natural, at least to not everyone. What's one piece of advice that you guys have for other women and minority groups trying to have a breakthrough in the casting space?
Just try. Like, basically, I didn't think I will be able to do it until I have to. Like, we start doing coverage, putting a small webcam on some road to national in France, and then I start buying more stuff and have more professional coverage, but I just try, and I hope that in a few years when I will come back to see the coverage, for now I will be ashamed of what I was at this time, but also proud to the fact that I've improved. But you have to start somewhere, and I think we can do the same for all the casters which are like rock star for us. But I think you can also find some video of them at the beginning when they were not that confident. So
No one ever please go and look at my original ones, because they were awful when I first started. So no one try and find them. Hopefully you didn't find that one when you were stalking me.
No, we didn't.
But yeah, so I think it's the same thing. Just try, and so I think also speak to your local LGS, because a lot of LGSs have the opportunity and have some kit revolving around cameras and microphones, because there's a lot of other TCGs that actually send these kits out to LGSs to stream games. I think only bigger LGSs get it. Not every LGS, but I know. So my local got a kit from one company for their TCG to stream the games. So speak to your LGSs and see if they have that chance, and if not, my DMs are open on Twitter. Send me a message and I'll find a way to get you into something. So like you said, we had Fake Little tournament. So I'm announcing, I don't know when this podcast is out, but I'm announcing soon, or by the time this podcast is out, a tournament online, Flesh and Blood, that is going to be kind of open casting for as many people as I can get in.
Cool.
And
that's so cool.
And we're casting multiple games at once, not just one table, so we can fit more casters in.
That's awesome.
So send me a message is my advice.
Good luck with the technical
That
part.
sounds cool.
The technical part's really fun. I'm really excited about it.
I might slide into your DMs then.
Sure, go ahead.
So what is? We've talked about challenges, a little bit, quite a bit actually. So what would you say is the biggest challenge to date for both of you that you've had in your casting career that you've had to overcome?
Starting, I think.
Have the time to.
Yeah, the time. It's difficult of the time to start when you work a 9 to 5, right? It's really tricky to find that time. And if I finish my job at 5 o'clock, I have half an hour to go get showered, get to my LGS for 6 o'clock to set up my stuff to stream, and it's just not enough time. So I think getting started.
All the preparation before and.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the most challenging part, being able to have time to have your normal job, because for some people it's easier because now that's their job. But for us, I still have another job, which is making me money to buy Flesh and Blood when my MTG cards. I will not be able to do that. But at least.
So do you both? Oh, sorry. You go.
Yeah, at least it's paying the plane to go to the US each time they need me there.
For Worlds.
Yeah.
I totally forgot my question.
Sorry.
No, that's okay, because I was listening and I was like, oh yeah, cool. Just ignore me.
All right. So I think we can move on to listener questions. We did have 2 more listener questions come through while we were talking. So
cool.
I added those. I don't know if you can see them, Melody, but if not, I can ask those and you can ask the 2 that you can see. So
I can only see 1.
Okay, well, I can see 4. So you ask your question.
Okay. Actually, no, I can see them now. Sorry, I lied.
Okay.
What am I going to pick? You go first, Elaine. I'm just reading them.
Okay. I'm going to ask this one from Adam Moonside Man. Just ask both of you guys for your respective scenes. What does the larger French and UK Fab TCG community look like to you, and which direction do you think the game is going locally in terms of popularity and player growth?
Do you want to do this one?
You
I
start,
need to
I
think.
start? Oh, I can
You
start.
can go. I need to think.
In Belgium, so for people who don't get it, I'm French, but I'm living in Belgium for 1 year, so that's a bit complicated. I'm in both community in the same time. In Belgium, as I said, it was easier to start because we were starting point was Netherlands, and it's just 1 hour of driving for the north part of Belgium. So you can see the difference in the community from the Dutch part and from the French part. Like 1 year of experience is very different. And then something special in the French community and in the French part of Belgium community has been history release, and the fact that the game is available in French, because for some people speaking in English is still too much for them. So we have seen an exploding number of people starting the game recently, a lot of new players coming from very different community, from different TCG. We have, like, for example, all people from Seven Fallen, which came here because Seven Fallen was just cut. So I don't know if this is known in other parts than Europe, but it was a small TCG which were just announced being dead. So every players were searching another community. So we have them, we have people from Dragon Ball Z, we have people from Pokemon, Digimon, and for sure from MTG as well. And all start with the history, because it was in the same time localized, but also a way to be able to get some cards from previous edition. And so the community is growing and growing. Like last year, we were the 4 same people at each armory. And now, even if we are not able to attend, there is always 8 or 10 people in the armory. So that's a very big difference. And people are like, everybody is giving the cards which are not legendaries, and people can lend cards if you want to buy 1 hero, because people who are started 1 year ago, they have much more cards, all the equipment and stuff like that. And so sometimes you have the equipment because you were previously playing another hero and you are able to give it for a tournament. For example, I have 2 tunic just because I know that a lot of people need 1 sometimes, even if this is one of the first one you buy. Then just have a second one just in case, just to be able to lend it. So yeah, so starting to be big, not having like our national were not similar to the US national. Like it was 1 day for both France and Belgium, but I'm hoping that it's starting to grow more and more, and especially the fact that we have a lot of good players who make good results. So it's inspiring others people in the country when you see somebody from your country winning, and in Europe we love to win. Sorry for the US. That's fact. So I'm hoping to see maybe different people in the world, having people from all the different countries, even if maybe this will be complicated for some people to go to the US. But I'm hoping to see much more different and people we don't know at the Worlds, and start inspiring people to do that. Yep. Did you have time
How
to
about
say
you,
about
Ellie? What's your local scene like over
I forgot
there?
what the question was. So my local scene. So my local scene only started up. I moved house about 9 months ago into my new place now. I'm kind of in the Midlands, north of the UK. And my local scene started off as, I think, 4 of us about 4 months ago. and it was 3 of us that had played before, and then one person that was like, "Oh, I'll try Flesh and Blood out." And then we're now playing so we have kind of a maximum of 13. We average about 8, which is pretty good considering it's such a new game in this area. My local store was actually the only store in the UK to buy into Seven Fallen, which is why I was laughing so much when you said it. Said that because we had a bunch of Seven Fallen players because it was the only place in the UK that did it. But now with that happening, we're hoping to get some of those players showing Flesh and Blood. So we've built up a bunch of kind of commoner and rare based CC decks and sharing them out to people as they come in to hopefully pull them in. Mainly things like Fire and Dramai because we opened too much Uprising. Spent way too much money on that. But I think the UK is in a perfect position already in terms of player base. You saw the Pro Tour, right? We have 2 players in the top 4 of the Pro Tour. Matt Folks and Shamir, both just insanely good players, and Shamir finally making it that far. And our nationals this time around was so competitive. I don't think either of them actually made it into top 8 because our nationals was so competitive. And we had just so many good players, and we had 2 separate broadcasts for our nationals over the entire weekend, kind of going in parallel, which was again an amazing thing to have for a game that's been in the UK for 2 years. So it's going to keep growing, and it's not a hope; it just is. With the way it's going at the moment, it's going to keep growing.
Awesome. So I have a question from Pat Smashgood from the Combat Chain, and this is for both of you. It's an interesting question. He said that the narrative going into Worlds is that the Europeans have an edge in Blitz because it's the favoured format over there. I didn't know that, but apparently. He said, see the Call and Cracker on the BH Battle Hardened Leads. Do you guys know anything about that? Because basically what he's asking is, how does the competitive base actually feel about Blitz versus CC?
I think that most of our events were Blitz because the community is much younger. So LSS maybe tried to push Blitz formats to make it more accessible for player in the community. That's my guess. I don't think that people prefer Blitz. What I've seen in all the community is when the community is starting, every tournament is in Blitz. And then as soon as people have the cards or the knowledge to play in CC, they prefer to play in CC. So I will not say that Blitz is more popular, but much more a question of timing.
Yeah.
My opinion from the small view I have on the different local communities.
No, I mean, that's a good point. Blitz is definitely the easier format to teach someone the game on, right? CC can be very intimidating. I learned on Blitz and I fell in love with the game on a Blitz format. And I honestly, for almost 3 weeks, I was like, I don't want to play CC. This is I say almost 3 weeks. It was probably literally a week because I think I only learned a week before I played in a Pro Quest, not a Pro Tour. But I was at first I was I only want to play Blitz. I don't want to play CC. This is fun. I enjoy this. And then I played CC and I was like, oh, this is the game. This is so.
It's require much more different knowledge of the game because if you play CC, you often go to time. When you are starting Flash,
the
you are very slow. You don't understand what's going on. And the problem in CC, if you make bad decision on the first turn, you know you will be dead, but it will take maybe 5-6 turns to get there. But you know you will never come back. Or you don't know, but your opponents know. But in Blitz, that's different because even if you do mistake in 3 turns, it's the end and you can start a new game and you can learn from your mistake. It's much more cycles, but then when you know what you're doing, it's becoming frustrating and you want to go to the real game.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Ellie? Or
I think the same thing. In the UK, Blitz was what we had for our Battle Hard and that kind of thing in Leeds, just because it was what the game was in the UK for 18 months, maybe less than that before the Battle Hard happened. So that happened in January of this year, I think. I took KO and did not do very well at all. But KO was fun. I got roll dice. But yeah, so I think it's just the same thing. Like the timing of it is like I think our calling of Battle Hardened coming up soon is CC. Like we're moving now. The community's matured onto CC, and that's why we're kind of spreading CC more at my local game store as well. Is because the community's maturing to that point. It's time to start kind of spreading CC around as much as Blitz was.
Yeah. We shall see at Worlds, right? So here's a question for you, Aurélie. It's from Martin Crawies.
Yeah.
I might have said that wrong, but it says, "How do you cope? How do you cope with the blocking ability of ninja equipment? Also, it's always a blast to cast with you. One more thing, bingo."
Sure. It's kind of a private joke. I need to explain first. So Martin is one of co-caster, like not part of the channel, but one guest we often have to do the coverage because it's hard to have everyone available the D-Day. Like I'm the only one without children on my channel team, so I'm the one available in the weekend. And he's doing this amazing things to have a bingo each time we are doing a coverage together. And so there is a bingo of different things who can happen on screen. And each time he's doing that, I'm just focusing on completing the bingo, and I don't care about it. So I'm picking different matchup just because I need to complete my row on my own, and I'm hoping the top 8 brackets just to fit my needs to have the few remaining stuff. But I think that's the aim of that. Like people enjoy it, so that's
that's great.
And then one of the bingo case was an easy one to have is Aurélie is complaining about ninja equipment because I'm doing that a lot. Because when I start playing, I play Ketsa, and I always complain that my equipment were never able to blocked. And I've seen this grasp and this kind of mine. It's blocked one time for one, and then it's red. That's not fair. So I don't have any good equipment, and the only good equipment I can go will be the skull cap, but I cannot get rid of mask. So please give me something here. And I was hoping with a new ninja. And they were good equipment, but they are also draconic, so not playable by Ketsa. So I will stop complaining when we will have one Ketsa will be able to play. That's
so Aurélie,
some equipment LSS.
I don't know if you know, but in the banned and restricted announcement.
I know they banned mask. They banned the mask.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, yes. It's a Benji has been a collateral damage. Benji and Ketsa just die for 5. That's.
I mean, I play Benji with the old mask anyway, still, but
that's pouncing links.
No, with the normal mask.
The pouncing links is banned now.
It's the banned one.
Yeah, because of Phi, I think. But that's a shame because I remember with our channel we get the Spring Tidings preview, and we were very exciting to have this one because we were just making. We didn't have all the other cards with the sets, and we were already thinking about how you can go and OTK a turn with Spring Tidings, pouncing links, and stuff like that. That was a very, in my memory, a good stuff.
All right, we had one more question from RFL for Ellie, which was just what sort of things you want to see in the future of Fab casting coverage. I think we talked a lot about that, but if you have anything else to add before we wrap it up, go ahead. If not, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up so Melody can go to work.
I want to see RFL casting of Flesh and Blood. That's what I want to see.
That
should be great.
Yeah, I got to meet her and play some games with her in Pro Tour New Jersey, and it was a lot of fun. So I would love to see that too. All right, Melody, take us away.
Yeah, cool. So before we wrap things up, we have one question that we'd like to ask all of our guests that come on our pod. And the question is are there any topics or content that you'd like to see on the Pitch Perfect podcast in the future?
I want to see you two casting a game together.
Oh, you're
So
now
we
the
have to
third
play
person.
and we have to cast, Melody. Maybe we'll...
But maybe what you can do is something we also are doing on our channel is making a community tournament, and then it's giving you both the opportunity to promote a community with a fun and safe space to play, and also a good way to comment, because this is your tournament. You can do whatever you want.
Well, we are supposed to be doing one with the rainbow foils.
I say we're trying to work one out. So maybe
Yes.
we'll sneak in a game that we cast together in that.
Oh, I'd be terrible at casting.
Yeah, well, you have to give it a try. We have so much fun.
Oh my god. Yes. Oh,
All right,
okay.
well-
Thank you, Ellie.
Sorry, you asked me a question.
Yeah, no. What about you, Aurélie? Do you have anything that you'd like to see that maybe we
Do
haven't
this
talked about
tournament
before?
stuff. I think this can be cool to have you comment stuff.
Thanks, guys.
We are gonna give it our all.
Okay,
Yes,
yes.
but you know, when this is a tournament which is community driven, it's much more easy to start because there is no people don't really care about having very technical or high level comments. They are here for your channel, for your personality, and they just enjoy living the tournament with you. So I think it's an easy step to start. And this is also a good opportunity for people to play.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
And we've got all the tips that we need now, don't we? You guys have shared everything. So
Yep.
thank you. Thank you for being on our show today. It's been awesome.
Yeah, no, this
Really
is
nice.
great. I feel so I don't know, I just feel at ease now. I'm ready to just go on, tackle the rest of my day. This was a great start. I think it's early. Well, it's earliest for Melody, so
It
hopefully
is.
you also feel
It's
the same,
for us.
Melody. Mine is lunch, and usually I'm productive after lunch. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. This was great. I had a really great time talking to you guys. I think we had a good discussion. I hope all of our listeners enjoy it. But please take the opportunity to plug yourselves. Tell everyone where they can find you on socials and in the casting world. If you have anything cool coming up, this is your time. Just let everyone know what you have going on. So yeah, go ahead.
For me, just so I go by Echo online, so that's EKO. So my Twitter is at EKOcasts, which is CASTS. And I also coach for a Valorant team. And you can find us at Altiora, which is ALTIORA_gaming. And so that's my team I coach in Valorant.
Awesome. Thank you.
On my part, maybe the best way to follow me for Flesh and Blood content is to go to the channel. Twitter and Twitch is Oidophilia, which is a French version to Iophilia, and I know it's a nightmare to write for non-French speaker because this is not the best and easy word, but it's spelled O-E-I-L. It's œil for eye. I think I get it right. That spelling stuff in the language which is not yours. It's complicated. But I think you can just write down in the description, and you can also follow me. I'm mostly tweeting about Flesh and Blood, but also development stuff. So maybe you are in the in the cross of both domain. I also have a personal Twitch, but it's much more live coding. Doing tools for Flesh and Blood tournament. So it's
we will find the links and we'll put them in the...
Yeah.
So
we'll link you guys in the description. Right.
That's best.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.